You don't expect to get punished for being smart with money. But that's exactly what happened. I'd been with Dunshire Equipco for 19 years, longer than Jerry Myers, the man who called me into his office that Friday afternoon. I wasn't flashy like some of the younger guys leasing brand new pickups with their names stitched on the tailgates. I packed a lunch, wore clean but worn boots, and I invested every damn bonus since 2010. Jerry didn't even look me in the eye when he handed me the paper. Said it was a departmental reduction. Said they were letting go of guys who could afford to be let go. Can you believe that? I lost my job for not living paycheck to paycheck. I didn't argue, just nodded, took the cardboard box, and walked out past a bunch of guys who wouldn't look me in the eye either. Guess they figured keeping quiet was safer. I drove home in my '01 Tacoma with 270,000 miles on the odometer and a suspension that creaked like an old man's knees. My mind raced, but my hands stayed calm on the wheel. I thought about how I'd tell Megan. Figured we'd tighten the belt, maybe cancel that Napa trip she'd been planning with Mary Brooks. She never liked when I said no, but hell, we'd weathered worse. Pulled into the driveway just before 5. Megan's car was already there, odd for a Friday. Usually she worked late, catching up on grant reports. I figured maybe she was planning something nice. One of those evenings with candles and wine, the kind that got rarer each year. I grabbed the box from the passenger seat, walked to the door, and noticed it was cracked open. Not wide, just enough to notice. The air smelled off. Something faint, musk and sweat, not dinner. I stepped inside and set the box on the entryway bench. The house was quiet, but not silent. Upstairs, a moan. At first, I thought maybe Megan had hurt herself. It was that kind of sound, sharp like pain. Then another, lower, drawn out. Then came the laugh. Her laugh, and his laughter in my bedroom at my expense. I stood there in the hallway like a damn statue. My boots were still on. Dirt from the job site clung to the treads and left faint tracks on the tile floor. I looked down and saw my own shadow stretching toward the staircase like a line drawn in the sand. I didn't go up. Didn't need to. I knew that laugh. I knew the cadence of it. Knew the deeper, wheezing 1-2 Mark Brooks. Married to Megan's best friend, Mary. We'd had them over for Christmas. For God's sake. I'd bought Mark a set of drill bits. The expensive kind. I turned around. I walked right back out. No yelling. No fist through drywall. No Jerry Springer nonsense. Just one step, then another, then the click of the front door behind me. I tossed the cardboard box in the truck bed. Sat in the driver's seat for a moment. I looked at the rearview mirror. My face looked calm. Too calm. Like the inside of a pressure cooker right before the valve blows. I didn't wait to find out if it would. Turned the key. Backed out slowly. Didn't even glance at the upstairs window. Just turned west onto County Road 6 and kept driving. The sun was starting to dip low. That rich golden hour light spilling across the fields like honey. The kind of light that makes even pain look pretty. I passed the corner gas station where Megan always insisted on buying bottled water because the town's tap tasted like pennies. I drove past the park where I used to meet her for lunch before she got too busy. Past the Brooks place, the one with the inflatable reindeer still deflating on the porch even though Christmas was 6 weeks gone. I passed it all. Didn't stop. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. But something broke inside me. Not like a plate hitting the floor. More like a rope snapping on a bridge you've been crossing every day for years. Suddenly, there's just air where something solid used to be. And I didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning. Of Missouri. Of everything that came next. I didn't stop until Lincoln. By then, the sun had dropped behind the horizon and the highway signs had started to blur together. I passed a dozen towns I didn't even register. Just lights in the dark and gas stations with names like Come and Go and Pump and Pantry. Every hour that passed felt like a brick lifted off my chest and another one shoved into my stomach. That's what leaving feels like when you don't even know where you're going. I figured I'd get a room, shower, maybe grab a burger. But when I pulled into the Super 8 lot, I just sat there. Couldn't get out of the truck. I couldn't make myself do anything that felt like a plan. So I drove on. The truth was, I wasn't running from Megan. I was running from who I was with her. From that man who came home with a box full of office junk and still hoped his wife might light a candle for him. That man who confused endurance for strength. By the time I hit western Nebraska, the highway narrowed, and the stars got bigger. It was the kind of dark that made you feel honest. No noise, no glow, just engine hum and silence thick enough to hear your own thoughts trying to lie to you. I finally pulled over outside a town called Hyannis. Blink and you'd miss it. One gas station, one dinner, a grain elevator lit like a tombstone. The truck had started knocking 20 miles back. Timing chain, maybe a lifter. I popped the hood, looked like I knew what I was doing, then laughed. First real laugh since I left. It didn't matter. The truck was dead. So was that life. I slept in the cab that night. Cold crept in before dawn. Somewhere around 4 a.m., a train cut through the horizon like a ghost. No crossing arms, just a whistle and a wall of sound. I sat up, heart pounding, hand instinctively on the tire iron I kept behind the seat. Funny how fast your body remembers to survive. In the morning, I walked into the gas station. The kid behind the counter had a rat tail and a Mountain Dew tattoo on his arm. Didn't look up from his phone. "Do you need diesel or unleaded?" "Neither," I said. "I need a mechanic." He jerked a thumb toward the gravel lot across the road. "Old man Blake runs the ranch shop. Might help, if he ain't hunting." That's how it started. Bill Blake was leaning against a rust-colored F-250, rolling a cigarette with fingers that looked like they'd rebuilt engines and broken jaws in equal measure. He had a face like an unpaved road, weathered, cracked, but still holding. "You lost?" he asked, squinting at me under his ball cap. "Not anymore," I said. "The truck died just outside town." "Truck or you?" "Little of both." He looked at me for a long moment. Not the kind of look that needs words. The kind that sees a man's whole story stitched in his posture. "Are you looking for work or a priest?" "Work's better." "You drink?" "Coffee." "Good. Start with the horses. Shovels are in the barn." "You got a name?" I paused. Thought about saying Kelly, but that name had too much attached. Too many memories. Too much shame. Too many places where it echoed and didn't feel like mine anymore. "Call me Missouri." He raised an eyebrow. "You from there?" "Nope." Bill just grinned. "That'll do." By sundown, I had shit on my boots and hay in my shirt. My back ached like a man twice my age, and my arms shook from swinging a post driver. But for the first time in weeks, I slept. Deep. No phone. No emails. No fights about curtains or brand-name ketchup or whose turn it was to call the water heater guy. Just the smell of dirt and old wood and the creak of a barn door in the wind. I dreamed I was underwater. Not drowning. Just drifting. Silent. The next morning, I found an old pair of boots by my bunk. Worn in, steel-toed. Fit like they'd been waiting. Bill walked by with 2 thermoses in one hand and a rope in the other. "Are you staying?" he asked, not looking back. "Seems like it," I said. "Well then, Missouri, grab that branding iron. You're about to earn breakfast." And just like that, I stopped being the guy who caught his wife laughing upstairs. I became the man who didn't turn around. The first week nearly killed me. I was sore in places I didn't know had muscles. My hands blistered, then bled, then calloused. I cleaned stalls in the cold, hosed blood from the concrete floor, patched fences, and helped pull calves in the dead of night while the wind screamed like it wanted inside. Nobody at Blake Ranch asked about my past. It didn't matter. The name Missouri stuck like barbed wire. Even the ranch dogs barked less when they saw me coming. Bill didn't say much, but when he did, it mattered. "You're fast with the rope. You wrestle in college." "Nope." He nodded like that was the answer he expected. "You married?" "Was." He didn't ask more. I didn't offer. That was the deal out there. Show up, do the work, earn the silence. The rhythm of the place was steady and brutal. Morning coffee at 4:30. Saddled horses by 5. Feed by 6. Calves came when they came. Didn't matter if you were elbow deep in afterbirth or fixing busted wire. Everything moved because men like Bill made it move. He'd built that spread himself after Vietnam. Never remarried after his wife died in '89. Said cattle don't leave you because of a laugh or a layoff. Cows don't cheat, he said once while we castrated yearlings. They'll kick you, but they won't lie to your face. I didn't laugh. I just nodded. Because yeah, he got it. There was an old .223 rifle hanging in the barn. One morning after we found a dead goat with its throat torn out, Bill handed it to me. You shoot. Not lately. Coyotes don't care. The next night I waited, heard the rustle in the brush, saw the movement by the chicken pen, lined up the sights and fired. One shot. The coyote dropped like a bag of rocks. Bill never said good shot, just grunted and handed me another round. That was the praise out here, trust. I stopped checking my phone after the second week. Let the battery die. Stopped wondering if Megan had noticed I was gone. If Mark and Mary were playing house in my bed. If someone from Dunshire had sent a follow-up email saying, "This is all a mistake." None of it mattered now. Because every morning, I woke up with frost on the inside of the bunkhouse windows and a sense of purpose in my chest. I'd sweat through my shirt by noon, eat lunch standing, piss in the wind, and collapse in bed before 9. No more small talk. No more pretending. Just work. And the strange thing was, it felt clean. On a Wednesday in late March, the calving came heavy. 7 heifers went into labor all at once. Bill and I rotated stalls like triage nurses. I pulled 3 calves myself that night. One was a breech, another born blue. We worked by headlamp, no fanfare. Just blood, straw, and instinct. At one point, the mother was screaming and the calf wasn't breathing. Bill knelt beside me and barked. You want to lose it or fight for it? I grabbed the suction tube, cleared the lungs, and blew air into its mouth until it twitched. It coughed. Weak, but alive. We both just stood there for a second, watching it try to wobble upright. That's the job, Bill muttered. And it was. That night, I sat outside the bunkhouse with a tin cup of black coffee, staring at the stars. The wind had died. Coyotes kept their distance. I thought about my father for the first time in years. The man who taught me how to swing a hammer, then disappeared when I was 11. I remembered him saying once, "Sometimes the only thing a man can do is leave everything that ain't worth staying for." I didn't understand it back then. I sure as hell do now. In town, people started recognizing me, not as Kelly Free, but as Missouri. At the Hyannis Diner, a waitress named Dana would bring my coffee before I ordered. Kids would wave when we hauled hay through Main Street. One evening, the sheriff nodded at me outside the general store. "Heard you're working for Blake," he said. "He doesn't hire fools." I just tipped my hat. That was enough. I was still angry. That didn't vanish. But it had changed, hardened, focused. Out here, it didn't make sense to rant or rage. Anger had to be useful. If you were mad, you drove posts deeper. You stacked hay higher. You pulled harder when the calf wasn't breathing. And at night, when the wind died down and the crickets started up, I'd lay there and feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not joy, not hope, but peace. They say you can't run from yourself. I say they've never tried running hard enough, long enough, quiet enough, until your name doesn't mean what it used to. I wasn't Kelly Free anymore. I was Missouri. And that man, he could breathe again. Legends don't start with fireworks. They start with silence. In a town like Hyannis, Nebraska, stories grow like tumbleweeds. Fast, aimless, and rarely where they started. By the time you hear your name repeated, it's already not yours anymore. They called me Missouri, sure. But by that summer, I wasn't just a guy fixing fences. I was the man who pulled a woman from a burning trailer. The drifter who beat 2 bikers in a bar fight without spilling his whiskey. The loner who once roped a rattlesnake and laughed while doing it. All lies, except for the helicopter crash. That one was true, mostly. It was June when I first met Casey. The weather was hot enough to boil the inside of your boots. I just finished checking the west fence line when I heard it. Chopper blades, cutting hard and fast. Then came the sound that turns your blood cold, the silence after a sudden stop. I found the wreck in the pasture by Miller Creek. Smoke, metal twisted like tinfoil, One rotor buried in the cottonwoods. I didn't think so. I just ran. The paramedic, Casey, was crawling out of the side hatch, coughing, blood on her face. The pilot was slumped, legs pinned. Gasoline stung my nose. Fire licked the belly of the fuselage. Casey screamed, "He's stuck!" I didn't say a word, just grabbed the nearest branch and jammed it under the seat. Levered it up until I thought my shoulder might snap. She pulled. He slid out just as the tail caught flame. We cleared the tree line when the whole thing went up. Sounded like thunder. Later, when the ambulances came, they tried to take my name. "Missouri," I said. They asked for more. I gave them less. Word spread. I wasn't looking for attention. I just wanted a beer and silence. But that crash lit a fuse. Next thing I know, people in town were leaving pie on Bill's porch for Missouri. A kid asked me to sign his cast. One of the waitresses at the diner said I looked like Clint Eastwood's meaner cousin. That's the funny thing about legends. You don't have to earn 'em. Just be there when a story needs a face. Bill shrugged it off. Don't correct him. Let him talk. Talking keeps him out of trouble. Still, it sat strange in my gut. Not because it wasn't true I did help Casey, but because the truth didn't match the story people wanted. I wasn't a hero. I was a man who needed something to lift, to drag, to fix, because otherwise I might have collapsed myself. Casey came by the ranch a few weeks later. Bandage still on her wrist. Bruises dark under her shirt. She brought a pie. Rhubarb. Said she made it herself. I didn't touch it. "You saved my life," she said. "No. I just showed up first." She didn't smile. Same thing sometimes. We sat in silence on the porch, the kind that doesn't need words. I liked her quietness. It wasn't awkward, it was earned. She asked if I wanted to talk about where I was from. I told her I wasn't. She nodded like that made sense. The stories grew teeth. One night at the Hyannis Saloon, some drunk rancher from Wyoming started talking big. Said he heard Missouri once took on a bear with a shovel. Someone else added, "No, he is from Missouri. Killed a man there. Came up here to hide." I didn't flinch. Just sipped my beer and let the rumors do their dance. You learn fast. Men believe in ghosts more than facts. And sometimes it helps to be the shadow in the corner instead of the man in the light. Bill called it earning your silence. People like noise, Missouri. They are filled with myths. Let them. You earned your peace. Don't give up chasing the truth. He was right. Back in my old life, I'd fought for the truth. Told Megan every bank statement, every schedule, every plan. Still got betrayed. Still got laughed at. Now, I let the dust settle where it fell. I didn't need to explain myself to strangers anymore. Hell, I didn't even fully recognize the man in the mirror yet, and I wasn't about to let some bar gossip define him either. But the crash changed something else too. Casey kept coming back. Said she was thinking of moving out here full-time. Small clinic. Small life. I said nothing, just nodded. But I didn't mind her presence. She didn't ask about Megan. Didn't ask about the laugh I still heard in my nightmares. She just talked about wildflowers and ribs and how prairie storms made her feel small in a good way. Sometimes we'd ride together, checking fence lines. Once, she beat me to the south pasture gate, laughed and said, "You getting slow, cowboy?" I didn't answer, just tipped my hat and rode on. But I smiled. And just like that, Missouri became more than a name. It became armor, a story, clean break. She came in a rental car with out-of-state plates. I was brushing down one of the maras near the barn when I heard the tires crunch gravel. The sound was too smooth for a local rig, too polished, too unfamiliar. I stepped out just in time to see the door open. Megan. She wore a tan sweater, fitted jeans, and sunglasses too expensive for ranch dust. Her red hair was pinned back, her lipstick too bright for 8 a.m. Beside her stood Mark and Mary Brooks, matching smug expressions like they thought this was some kind of intervention. She looked right at me, then paused. "Kelly," she said softly. I didn't answer. I wasn't Kelly anymore. They walked up slowly, like they expected me to fall into their little drama. Like I was supposed to say something angry, broken, pathetic. but I just leaned against the post and waited. "You've been gone a long time," Megan said. "Long enough," I replied. My voice was calm, not cold, just done. She pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red, not from crying, from trying to look like she had. "I've been looking for you. I needed to talk." "You found me," I said. "Say what you came to say." She hesitated, looked over at Mark. He looked like he wanted to speak, but one glance from me shut him up quickly. "I'm pregnant," Megan said finally. "It's yours." The air went still. A truck door slammed in the distance. Wind blew dust across the ranch road. One of the horses let out a low whinny, like even she could smell the bullshit. I didn't flinch, just stared at Megan until she started shifting her weight. "Congratulations," I said. "You'll be getting the house and my lawyer's info. We're done." That shook her. She blinked. "Wait, what?" "Kelly, this is your child." "Our child." "No," I said. "That baby might be mine. But you and I? We ended the day I heard you laugh upstairs." Mark opened his mouth. I turned to him. "You speak, I drop you. Right here in front of your wife." He shut it. Mary looked like she wanted to vanish. Megan stepped closer, trying that old soft tone that used to melt my spine. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I was scared. You were so closed off. I didn't know how to reach you anymore. Mark was just a way out," I said. "Don't lie. Not here." She winced, but I wasn't done. "You don't come all the way to Nebraska for forgiveness. You came here thinking I'd still be him. The guy who paid the mortgage, kept his mouth shut, and asked what's wrong instead of walking away. But he's dead, Megan. You buried him." She shook her head, eyes wet now. "You're not who I remember." "No," I said. "I'm not. And thank God." Bill stepped out from the barn, wiping grease from his hands. He looked at the trio, then at me. "Everything all right, Missouri?" Megan blinked. "Missouri. That's what they call me now." Bill nodded at her politely, then looked at me again. "You need a minute?" "I'm good," I said. He nodded once and walked back inside. He didn't look back. Megan stared at me like I was a stranger. And she was right. The man she cheated on didn't know how to lift a calf from the mud, how to shoot coyotes at night, how to live with silence and not need it filled. She did this. She made Missouri. And now she couldn't control him. I turned to leave, but she called after me. "Please don't do this. We can fix it." "I want to fix it." I stopped, turned slow. "You want to fix it?" I asked. "All right. Sign the divorce papers. Keep the house. I'll set up support once the DNA confirms. But I'm not coming back. Not for you. Not for this circus." Her mouth opened, closed. She looked small now, like someone who had planned a speech but showed up to the wrong stage. Mark put his hand on her arm, like a man grabbing something broken off the shelf. Mary didn't say a word. Smart woman. They left. Didn't even look back. I watched the dust trail vanish down the gravel road. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel relieved. Just stood there a minute longer, letting the sun warm my back and the silence settled in. I walked to the bunkhouse, poured myself coffee, and sat on the step. Bill came by 5 minutes later. "Are they gone?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. He lit a cigarette and squinted at the sky. "Good," he muttered. "You're better than that mess." I didn't answer. Didn't have to. Later that night, I sat outside with my coffee again. Stars overhead, coyotes distant. She thought she could reclaim me, though the past still held power over the man I'd become. But you can't shame a man who's already buried the weaker version of himself. You can only watch him walk away. And I did. 2 weeks after Megan's visit, a letter from her attorney showed up at the ranch. Certified mail, neatly folded. No surprise. She was fighting the divorce. Said she wanted counseling. Said she believed we could restore our marriage for the child's sake. There were bullet points, citations from some therapist I'd never met, claims about abandonment, emotional unavailability, my unusual relocation. I chuckled. The woman who laughed in my bed with another man now wanted reconciliation. For the child. I didn't throw the letter away. I mailed it to my lawyer. The DNA test came back the following week. 99.98% probability. A daughter. I stared at the paperwork for a long time in Bill's barn office. The grain dust swirling in a shaft of light like snow that refused to settle. I had a daughter. Not a son I could teach to rebuild an engine or hold a rifle. No, a daughter. Someone who might one day ask why I left. Why I wasn't there the day she was born. Why did her mother use my last name on court documents but shared someone else's bed? I made one decision that day. No matter how ugly this got, I'd never lie to her. My folks were stunned when they found out. They'd assumed Megan and I were working things out. That's what she told them. When I told them the truth, my mother cried. My father went quiet. I want to be part of her life, my mom said. So does your father. I'm not stopping you, I said. But I'm not crawling back. They understood. Took them a while, but they understood. The courtroom smelled like old paper and cheap perfume. Megan wore a maternity dress like armor, her belly prominent, her expression practiced. Her attorney was a tall man with slick hair and a hollow smile. Mine was shorter, stockier, and meaner. He didn't smile at all. They tried to paint me as unstable. Said I'd fled across state lines to avoid responsibility. Claimed I'd abandoned my wife at her most vulnerable. Then my lawyer stood up. He laid it out in order. The layoff, the betrayal, the affair, confirmed by texts and bank records. The sudden pregnancy. The attempt to chase me down only after the money stopped. And then he played the audio. Megan's voice, laughing, breathless. He still doesn't have a clue. The judge's face didn't move, but I saw it in her eyes. Something shifted. In the end, the judgment was simple. No alimony. Custody to Megan with shared visitation rights. Support payments based on my income, which, thanks to the ranch and a few consulting contracts I'd picked up in Nebraska, were honest and modest. I walked out free, not unscathed, but free. Outside the courthouse, Megan caught up to me on the steps. Alone this time. You really meant it, she said. I meant all of it. I thought you'd come back. You always came back. Then you never knew me. She looked down at her stomach. What about her? I'll be there, I said. For her, not for you. We'll co-parent like two grown-ups. And I'll never speak ill of you around her. But don't confuse that with forgiveness. Tears welled in her eyes. Real ones this time. But I didn't move. Didn't comfort her. I turned and walked away. Back at the ranch, Bill and I didn't talk about court. We rebuilt the north fence. Loaded hay. Bled the brakes on the stock trailer. Worked like men do when there's nothing left to say. That night, I called my folks and gave them the news. Then I sat outside with a beer, staring at the moon, thinking about the girl I hadn't met yet. My daughter. She'd grow up in a world I'd tried to escape. With a mother I couldn't trust. But she'd know one thing for damn sure. Her father never begged. He built. I wasn't trying to win anymore. I'd already won. Because I'd stopped fighting for someone who laughed while I broke. Now, everything I gave went forward, not back. I returned to Bill's ranch 2 weeks after the judgment, with a used trailer, a tired horse, and more clarity than I'd had in years. The trailer was dented, paint faded, tires solid. The horse was a Missouri foxtrotter, chestnut coat, good temperament. I named him Boone. Felt right. Missouri and Boone, two names made for roads with no maps. Bill looked me over when I rolled in, gave a single nod, and pointed toward the barn. Back pasture's dry. You'll want to water first. That was his way of saying welcome back. I got to work like I'd never left. Days in the saddle, nights with invoices for side gigs, small construction consults, blueprint assessments for grain elevators and storage barns. I knew how to make things hold weight, and out here that knowledge paid in cash and respect. By fall, I had a trailer of my own and enough saved up to buy 5 acres off Route 61. Just north of town. Nothing fancy, just a strip of land with a view that lets you see a storm coming 30 miles away. I built a modular home on it. Nothing showy. 1 story, steel roof, big porch, and I gave it to Megan. That part surprises people. But I didn't do it for her. I did it for my daughter. I wanted her to grow up close to the man she'd one day call Dad. I wanted her to see horses, dirt, and open sky, not just shopping malls and cold apartments. Megan could have the place. I made the payments, handled the taxes, and kept the deed in my name. But it was theirs. No strings, just boundaries. We kept it civil. Megan called when there were updates. The baby was born healthy, 7 pounds 2 ounces. Named her Lila. I didn't argue. It was a beautiful name. I met her 2 weeks later. Megan brought her to the diner in town. Tiny thing. Big eyes. Little fists like she was already fighting to understand the world. When I held her, she didn't cry. That silence cracked something in me I didn't know was still fragile. I didn't talk much during the visit. Just watched. Memorized her face. Promised myself I'd never be the shadow her mother tried to make me into. We started video calls. 2-3 times a week. Lila would stare at the screen, then smile when I made a goofy face or shook a rattle. Megan kept the calls short. Formal. Fine by me. I didn't want friendship. I wanted consistency. I'd lost a marriage. But I wasn't about to lose fatherhood. One evening in late October, I walked into the Hyannis Diner and spotted a familiar face in the corner booth. Casey, the paramedic from the crash. She was laughing with the waitress, hair pulled back in a braid, clipboard and folders spread across the table. She looked like someone who belonged here now. When she saw me, her face lit up. Not romantic, not dramatic, just a soft kind of gladness. "You live here now?" she asked. "Sort of," I said. "I've got roots now, at least." She smiled. "I came back to open a clinic. Real one. We've got a nurse, basic equipment. Not much, but it's honest." That word hit me harder than she probably meant it to. Honest. We sat together for coffee. We talked about the weather, fence posts, local politics. She didn't ask about Megan. I didn't ask about her past. We just let the conversation breathe. That was the start. Casey and I didn't fall into anything fast. We weren't teenagers. We didn't burn hot. We simmered slowly. She'd stop by the ranch when her shifts ended. I'd bring her dinner from the diner if I was headed into town. We talked about Lila, about work, about staying sane when everything's falling apart and the only choice is to keep going. She didn't ask me to be more than I was ready to be. That's how I knew it might last. I wasn't trying to erase the past anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just living. Each day is a little fuller. Each night is a little quieter. Bill saw the change. One morning, as we tacked up the horses for a fence check, he handed me a rolled-up blueprint. "What's this?" I asked. He shrugged. "Heard you were thinking about building. Thought you might want better than a trailer." I looked at him. "You want me to stay?" He grinned. "Hell, Missouri. You already did." The production crew showed up in a black SUV with Illinois plates and tripods poking out the back. The local paper must have tipped them off. Something about the mysterious man behind the Hyannis rescue. They asked if I was from Missouri. I said, "Aren't we all in some way?" That confused them just enough to give me space. Eventually, they sat me down with a boom mic and a polite young woman in horn-rimmed glasses who asked if I'd be open to telling my story. Said it might help others. That's what they always say. I agreed on 2 conditions. No sob stories, and no damn melodrama. They titled the series The Man from Missouri. It had a ring to it, I guess. They filmed footage of the pasture at dusk, my silhouette on horseback, Casey at the clinic, Bill fixing a tractor engine with a wrench the size of a toddler. They asked me to recount the fire rescue. I told them I didn't remember much, just did what needed doing. They asked about the court case. I told them, I showed up, I told the truth, and I walked out whole. They asked if I forgave my ex-wife. I said I didn't waste breath on things that weren't mine to fix. The show aired regional first, then made its way online. Someone in Kansas said it inspired him to walk out of a toxic job. A woman in Montana sent a letter saying her husband started therapy after watching the 3rd episode. I never responded to the letters, but I read every damn one. Sometimes people just need proof that survival doesn't mean staying. Jane Casey moved in that spring. No ring yet, no rush. We weren't building a love story for the cameras. We were building a life. Lila started coming over on weekends when she was old enough. Called me dad by age 3. She loved Boone, the chestnut horse with the lazy blink and gentle steps. She'd hold my fingers while I walked her along the fence line, pointing at birds like they were secrets only she could see. Megan never gave me trouble. Maybe because she knew better, or maybe because, somewhere deep down, she'd finally understood. She didn't break me. She made me walk toward something better. Jane and I had 2 boys, John and Eli. Strong kids, born early but tough as nails. Jane said they had my eyes. I said they had her fire. Bill passed a few years later, peacefully, in his sleep. Left me the ranch in a letter sealed with old tape and spit. Keep it alive, or burn it down if you must. Just make it honest. I did. Didn't change much. Just upgraded the water system and put solar on the barn roof. The place didn't need modernizing. It needed remembering. People still ask about Missouri. He became a thing bigger than me. A local ghost, a cautionary tale, a quiet myth. Some said I was ex-military. Others thought I was on the run from the FBI. A woman once asked if I was in witness protection. I told her, "Aren't we all in some way?" One night, Jane and I sat on the porch, watching the boys chase fireflies and Lila feed carrots to Boone. "Do you ever think about who you used to be?" she asked. I nodded. Sometimes. He wasn't all bad. Just misused. "You think he'd recognize you now?" "No," I said. "But I think he'd respect me. That's the thing about redemption. It's not a place. It's not a second chance given by someone else. It's the quiet decision to become someone your former self wouldn't mess with. It's knowing your worth without needing anyone to clap for it. It's building a life that makes no room for begging, proving, or performing." I don't tell people much about Kelly Free anymore. He died in a driveway outside a house he paid for, listening to a laugh that didn't belong to him. Missouri lived. Missouri rides. And Missouri sleeps soundly every damn night.